Cartoons may look colorful and innocent, but sometimes the complaints pile up until networks panic. Parents, watchdog groups, or even governments have stepped in, demanding shows be pulled off the air. But here's the real shock. Most of these cartoons weren't canceled because of low ratings or bad storytelling. They were yanked because people said they went too far. So, which shows got tossed aside after complaints got loud enough? Let's dig into the stories you won't believe actually happened. Beavis and Butt-Head. Few cartoons stirred up more outrage in the 90s than Beavis and Butt-Head. MTV thought they had a cult hit on their hands. Two dim-witted teens who laughed at everything and skewered music videos with their bizarre commentary. But soon, complaints rolled in from parents and community groups. They claimed the boys' crude antics were a bad influence on kids. The biggest blow came when news stories linked the show to copycat behavior, even though the evidence was thin. MTV responded by yanking the show from its early evening slot and pushing it to late night. They also forced edits, removing catchphrases that critics blamed for dangerous imitations. Despite the backlash, Beavis and Butt-Head became a cultural phenomenon, with merchandise, spin-offs, and even movies. Ironically, the complaints only made the show more famous, turning it into the poster child for cartoons gone too far. The message was clear. What outraged parents wanted to silence often became the very thing teenagers couldn't stop watching. Ren and Stimpy. When Nickelodeon's original Ren and Stimpy ended, fans hoped for a revival. They got it in 2003, but not in the way they expected. Spike TV brought back the duo with Ren and Stimpy, adult party cartoon, promising edgier stories aimed at grown-ups. The result? An avalanche of complaints. Viewers claimed the new episodes went overboard with gross-out gags and uncomfortable humor that pushed the limits of what TV audiences wanted to see in a cartoon. The backlash was swift. Parent groups protested, critics trashed it, and even longtime fans said the revival had lost the charm of the original. Instead of being shocking in a clever way, it was seen as shocking just for the sake of it. After only a handful of episodes, the show was pulled and never returned. The once beloved duo was left with a tarnished legacy, remembered more for the controversy of their reboot than the brilliance of their early days. It's a reminder that sometimes complaints don't just end a show, they bury its chance for redemption. Cow and Chicken. On the surface, Cow and Chicken was just another wacky Cartoon Network show. The surreal adventures of a cow and her oddball brother seemed silly enough. But one episode in particular sparked a wave of outrage. Titled Buffalo Gals, it introduced a group of motorcycle-riding women who broke into homes and chewed on carpets. While the writers thought it was an absurd joke, complaints flooded in claiming the portrayal was offensive and inappropriate for children. Cartoon Network acted fast. The episode was pulled from rotation, never to be aired again on television. For a show known for its bizarre humor, this was the line that executives decided couldn't be crossed. Fans today can still find clips online, but officially, the episode vanished into the vault. The controversy gave Cow and Chicken a strange kind of fame, with people more curious about the banned episode than the rest of the series. Once again, complaints didn't just silence a cartoon, they immortalized one of its strangest moments. Mighty Mouse. The New Adventures. Mighty Mouse had been around since the 1940s, but in 1987, Ralph Bakshi revived him with The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse. This version was edgier, satirical, and definitely stranger. But one episode ignited a storm of complaints. Viewers claimed a scene showed Mighty Mouse sniffing something from a flower in a way that looked like inappropriate behavior. Though the creators insisted it was innocent, critics weren't convinced. The complaints grew so loud that CBS decided to pull the episode and edit the scene out completely. What was meant to be a silly visual gag turned into a national controversy. The show itself continued for a short while, but the damage was done. Parents and watchdog groups kept a closer eye on it, and the series never recovered its reputation. It's a classic example of how one scene, even when misunderstood, can spark enough complaints to derail an entire cartoon. Pokémon may be one of the most successful franchises in history, but even it couldn't escape being pulled after complaints. In 1997, an episode called Electric Soldier Porygon aired in Japan, featuring flashing red and blue lights during a battle sequence. Within minutes, hundreds of children reported headaches, dizziness, and even fainting. News reports exploded, and panic spread across the country. Complaints flooded the network, blaming Pokémon for putting kids at risk. The episode was immediately pulled and has never been re-aired anywhere in the world. For years, Pokémon carried the shadow of that incident, even though later studies suggested the reaction was triggered only in a very small percentage of viewers. Still, the controversy was so massive that Porygon, the Pokémon featured in the episode, was practically blacklisted from future appearances. What was supposed to be just another adventure turned into a headline-grabbing cautionary tale, proving that sometimes one mistake can leave a mark that never goes away. Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry is one of the most iconic cartoons ever made, but not every episode has survived the test of time. When the classic shorts were rebroadcast decades later, complaints surfaced about scenes showing characters smoking or drinking, as well as outdated caricatures that critics called offensive. Parents argued such imagery sent the wrong message to kids, while advocacy groups demanded that networks pull or edit the questionable segments. In response, several episodes were either heavily altered or completely removed from circulation. What's fascinating is how a cartoon that originally aired without controversy in the 1940s and 50s became a lightning rod decades later. The legacy of Tom and Jerry remains strong, but its history is full of edits and omissions that remind us how shifting cultural standards can reshape what we're allowed to see. Complaints didn't erase the show; it's still beloved worldwide, but they did force networks to rewrite parts of its past. Looney Tunes, the Censored 11. Even legends like Looney Tunes weren't immune to complaints. In the 1960s, Warner Brothers pulled 11 cartoons from circulation after audiences objected to their outdated racial caricatures. These shorts, later dubbed the Censored 11, became infamous for being locked away in the studio vaults. For decades, you couldn't watch them on TV or in official collections, no matter how much of a completist you were. The controversy became a legend of its own, with fans hunting for bootleg copies just to see what was hidden. Complaints may have forced Warner Brothers to act, but the decision also turned the Censored 11 into a forbidden piece of animation history. Today, the debate still rages. Should they remain banned, or should they be released with proper context? Either way, these complaints left a permanent scar on one of the most beloved cartoon universes ever created: Family Guy. If any modern cartoon thrives on complaints, it's Family Guy. Fox's animated juggernaut has faced pushback for years, with critics blasting its edgy jokes and endless boundary pushing. But certain episodes proved too much, even for its network. After major tragedies, including sensitive real-world events, several episodes were quietly pulled from reruns. Viewers had complained that the timing was insensitive, and Fox responded by pulling the plug. This wasn't the only time Family Guy was yanked. Early in its run, parents' groups flooded Fox with complaints about its humor, leading to multiple cancellations before DVD sales brought it back. The irony is that every time Family Guy faced outrage, its popularity only grew. Complaints turned into free publicity, and today, it stands as one of the longest-running animated shows ever. The lesson? Sometimes pulling an episode doesn't bury a cartoon, it cements its rebellious reputation forever. Dexter's Laboratory. Rude removal. Dexter's Laboratory was one of Cartoon Network's most beloved shows, full of clever humor and kid-friendly science shenanigans. But there was one episode the world wasn't meant to see, until it leaked years later. Titled Rude Removal, the episode featured Dexter and Dee Dee accidentally splitting into rude clones who used constant bleeped-out swearing. Parents who previewed it complained immediately, claiming it was way too harsh for children's television. As a result, Cartoon Network shelved the episode indefinitely, and it never aired during the show's original run. For years, fans whispered about the lost episode until it finally surfaced online as a cult curiosity. Complaints may have kept it hidden, but they also gave it legendary status. Today, Rude Removal is remembered less as an embarrassment and more as proof that even a sweet science cartoon had a wild side. Networks didn't want kids to see. Peppa Pig. It's hard to imagine something as gentle as Peppa Pig causing controversy, but in 2012, one episode sparked enough complaints to get it pulled in Australia. The story taught children not to be afraid of spiders, showing Peppa befriending one. Parents quickly objected, arguing that this was dangerous advice in a country where spiders can be deadly. The backlash was immediate, and the episode was yanked from broadcast. What's interesting is that the very same episode continued to air in other countries without issue. But in Australia, the complaints stuck, and the episode was permanently banned. This case shows how local context can turn a harmless message into a national debate. For Peppa Pig, the incident was a reminder that even the friendliest cartoons can get tangled in complaints when cultural realities collide. Sometimes what seems safe in one part of the world is a deal-breaker in another. SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob has been a staple of kids' TV for over 2 decades, but even Bikini Bottom has had its share of pulled episodes. One of the most notorious was Quarantined Crab. The episode centered around a health scare at the Krusty Krab, with characters isolating and panicking over who might be infected. When the global pandemic hit, networks pulled the episode after complaints that it was too close to real-world fears. Nickelodeon decided it was better to shelve the story rather than risk offending or alarming families. Some fans argued the network overreacted since SpongeBob's comedy is always exaggerated, but the complaints won out. The result was one of the rare episodes from the beloved series that never got a proper airing. Ironically, the ban only made fans more curious, turning Quarantined Crab into a hidden gem in SpongeBob's long history. Sometimes the attempt to avoid controversy makes a cartoon even more legendary. Tiny Toon Adventures. One beer. Tiny Toon Adventures usually leaned into lighthearted comedy and wacky slapstick. But in one infamous episode, the writers tried to deliver a lesson about drinking, and it backfired spectacularly. In One Beer, Buster, Plucky, and Hampton steal a drink, get tipsy, and drive a car off a cliff as a lesson to show kids how dangerous alcohol can be. The complaints rolled in almost immediately. Parents argued that even showing cartoon characters doing this was irresponsible, no matter the intended message. The backlash forced Warner Brothers to pull the episode from circulation, and it never aired again during the show's original run. While the creators wanted to deliver a strong warning, audiences felt it went too far. Today, One Beer is remembered as one of the most shocking banned episodes in cartoon history, a case where complaints turned an attempted public service into a cautionary tale for animators. Mr. Magoo. Mr. Magoo was a popular cartoon character for decades, but eventually the complaints caught up with him. The short-sighted character constantly stumbled into trouble, and while audiences once found it funny, critics later argued it relied on mocking disability. Advocacy groups pushed back, claiming the jokes sent the wrong message to younger viewers. networks began to quietly pull Magoo cartoons from regular circulation. By the late 90s, the character's presence on TV had almost completely disappeared. While the studio occasionally tried to revive him, the complaints had already shaped his reputation. What was once seen as harmless slapstick turned into an example of how humor ages and sometimes doesn't. Mr. Magoo's fall from the spotlight shows how complaints don't just end episodes, they can erase an entire character from cultural memory. The Boondocks. The Boondocks was never afraid of controversy. That was its brand. But the animated series also racked up plenty of complaints, and some episodes were outright pulled. The most famous example was The Hunger Strike, which criticized a major television network. After pressure and complaints from executives, the episode was yanked from airing in the U.S. Other episodes faced similar fates, with networks fearing backlash from both viewers and advertisers. Despite being critically acclaimed, the Boondocks constantly walked a tightrope between biting satire and viewer outrage. While some fans praised it for speaking truth to power, others complained it went too far. The result was a show that often made headlines for what you couldn't watch as much as for what you could. In the end, complaints didn't destroy the Boondocks, but they ensured its most controversial episodes became forbidden fruit for fans. Static Shock. Static Shock was a groundbreaking superhero cartoon that tackled real-life issues head-on. But one episode, Jimmy, sparked immediate complaints. The story dealt with a teen who brought a gun to school, a plotline inspired by real-world tragedies. While the creators intended to show the dangers of violence, parents and advocacy groups argued it was too raw for children's television. The backlash led to the episode being pulled from reruns and heavily restricted. For years, it remained one of the hardest episodes to find, despite its powerful message. Critics still debate whether the complaints robbed kids of an important lesson or saved them from content deemed too heavy. Either way, Static Shock proved that cartoons willing to deal with tough subjects were always at risk of being silenced by complaints. Sometimes, the very stories meant to help end up locked away. South Park thrives on pushing boundaries, but even it has faced episodes pulled after complaints. Over the years, certain storylines sparked protests, with viewers and organizations demanding networks take them off the air. Instead of cutting jokes, Comedy Central sometimes chose to ban entire episodes from reruns and streaming. What makes South Park unique is how the complaints didn't weaken the show, it only made it more notorious. The episodes that were pulled became underground legends, circulating online and fueling debates about free expression. Fans still hunt for those lost installments, treating them like forbidden treasures. South Park has always aimed to shock, but the times it got yanked prove one thing. When a cartoon is designed to offend, complaints are practically part of the business model. Adventure Time. Adventure Time looked like a lighthearted fantasy for kids, but its creative storytelling often slipped in deeper themes. One episode showed Princess Bubblegum and Marceline sharing a moment that hinted at their close relationship. While many viewers loved the representation, complaints came in from certain countries saying it was inappropriate for children. In response, some networks overseas pulled or censored the episode entirely. In the United States, the scene stayed, but the global complaints revealed how cultural differences could decide what a cartoon audience gets to see. Adventure Time became a landmark show for its imagination and heart, but also a reminder that what feels harmless in one place can cause uproar somewhere else. The complaints didn't kill the show, but they left a mark on how its legacy is discussed worldwide. Garfield and Friends. Garfield and Friends usually stuck to lasagna jokes and farmyard silliness, but one skit stirred unexpected backlash. The writers created a parody of a "Just Say No" public service announcement, flipping it into a comedy routine. Parents, however, weren't laughing. Complaints argued that kids could take the joke the wrong way and miss the intended message. CBS reacted by quietly shelving the segment from future reruns. For a cartoon as tame as Garfield, the controversy felt surprising, but it showed how even a small satirical jab could spark enough pushback to erase part of a series. Fans today often forget the episode existed at all, but its disappearance proves that even the safest cartoons can stumble into trouble when complaints pile up. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. In the 1980s, He-Man ruled the toy aisles and Saturday mornings. But the show also became a target for complaint groups. Parents argued that the fantasy setting, with its castles and sorcery, sent the wrong message to children. Fueled by a wave of moral panic at the time, critics demanded the show be pulled from TV. Networks began trimming its presence, and while He-Man stayed popular for years, the complaints chipped away at its reputation. Some stations even dropped reruns altogether, deciding it wasn't worth the controversy. Looking back, the backlash seems extreme for what was essentially a commercial for action figures. Still, it shows how quickly a cartoon can go from king of the playground to a target of parental fury. The Simpsons. The Simpsons is one of the longest-running shows ever, but even Springfield has episodes that vanished after complaints. The most famous case involved an episode guest-starring Michael Jackson. When allegations about the singer resurfaced years later, producers faced renewed complaints. They decided to permanently pull the episode from circulation, removing it from streaming and rerun packages. For many fans, this was shocking. The Simpsons rarely erases its history. But the decision showed that even a cultural juggernaut will cave if the complaints are loud enough. The episode is now a ghost in the show's catalog, remembered mostly for being erased. In a series built on poking fun at everything, it's ironic that one episode couldn't survive the backlash. So there you have it, 20 cartoons that weren't defeated by low ratings, but by complaints that grew too loud to ignore. Some were pulled for cultural reasons, others for timing, and a few simply for jokes that didn't land the way creators expected. But here's the twist. When cartoons get yanked, they often become more famous than ever. Which of these do you think deserved to stay on the air? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more hidden stories from animation's wild side.